On the 31st of May 1998, the incursion of a single fox at the port of Burnie in Tasmania was reported. The fox, believed to have originated at Webb Dock in Melbourne, was seen escaping a cargo vessel. This incident was also corroborated by video footage and physical evidence of fox footprints at a nearby beach. Although this particular fox was never recovered, the incident focused attention upon Tasmania's potential susceptibility to biological invasions from the mainland, assisted by regular roll-on, roll-off ferry services operating from Melbourne. This incident also generated substantial public interest. In the 3 months subsequent, 45 media stories appeared in the 3 most popular Tasmanian newspapers alone. Fortunately, given the incursion occurred outside of the fox breeding season, a single animal at large wasn't a realistic threat of a fox population establishing in Tasmania. Yet in 2001, the Tasmanian National Parks and Wildlife Service claimed that between 11 and 19 foxes had been deliberately released in a well-organised attempt to establish foxes in the state. Although the Tasmanian Police found no evidence to support this claim, a media campaign and dedicated phone hotline was established in order to encourage members of the public to report fox sightings and physical evidence of foxes. In the same year, a number of pieces of opportunistically recovered post-mortem evidence were presented or provided anonymously, yet many were dismissed as hoaxing, using foxes sourced from the Australian mainland. A few exhibits were believed by some to be more credible evidence of an extant fox population, but none could be linked conclusively to the Tasmanian landscape. Throughout 2001 until 2003, hundreds of anecdotal fox sightings were also reported by members of the public. These were believed to confirm the presence of foxes in the state, and a tally of sightings was frequently reported in the press and by the Tasmanian government. Soon clusters of sightings, or hotspots, of fox activity were identified, despite a lack of corroborating physical evidence for any single sighting. Consequently, a fox eradication program began in 2003 in response to a growing belief that numerous foxes were present at multiple locations in the state. Specific areas in the north and east of Tasmania were baited on multiple occasions, guided predominantly by concentrations of anecdotal sightings. However, no evidence of the uptake of 1080 baits by foxes was found, nor was any other empirical survey data indicating the presence or abundance of foxes collected. Subsequently, the eradication program again used the frequency of anecdotal sightings that had occurred in general proximity to the baited locations as an indicator of baiting success in at least 12 distinct locations. It was found that anecdotal sightings reported for those areas declined subsequent to baiting, and this indirectly implied that foxes were present in the state, and that anecdotal sightings were a reliable means to survey their distribution and density. In a review of the fox eradication program in 2006, a statistical model was fitted to these anecdotal sightings and used as an indicator of baiting efficacy. Thereafter, this analysis was used to promote the likely effectiveness of more widespread baiting in Tasmania. Given the importance attributed to anecdotal information in defining the distribution of foxes and targeting and assessing the efficacy of fox baiting after 2002, we investigated the overall reliability of this approach. In the absence of empirical data confirming the distribution or abundance of foxes, we poised an alternative hypothesis to account for the decline of anecdotal sightings coincidental with 1080 baiting. We propose that changes in the incidence of anecdotal fox sightings are associated only with media intensity and prior reports of fox-associated events, irrespective of their validity. We had access to records of anecdotal sightings reported to the Fox Eradication Program hotline between 2001 and 2003 for 12 complete quarters. Reports assessed by the Fox Eradication Program had been rated for their quality and reliability subjectively without cooperation using physical evidence of foxes. We found no cases where any anecdotal sightings have been corroborated with physical evidence over this period. Also between 2001 and 2003, 11 widely reported fox events were identified by the Fox Eradication Program and were widely reported in the media. Each event originally implied direct knowledge or physical evidence of foxes or their malicious release. Although the vast majority of claims associated with these events were eventually revised, assumed to be hoaxes or could not be corroborated, our study was unconcerned with testing their validity. We developed 2 indices of media intensity in Tasmania. The first was generated by counting the number of fox-related articles published in the 4 local Tasmanian newspapers: the Mercury, the Advocate, the Examiner, and the Tasmanian Country, for each month and quarter between 2001 and 2003. The second media index was an indicator of annual media intensity from 2001 until 2010, developed by counting the number of archived media pages in the Trove database maintained by the National Library of Australia in Canberra. This was achieved by searching for 2 terms: Tasmania and Foxes, or Tasmanian Foxes, for all Australian environmental media and all media records over this period. We modelled the media index and events as frequencies and continuous variables in a univariate general linear model incorporating ANOVA with F-test and linear regression, or in a generalised linear model. Pearson's product moment correlation and linear regression was used for simple comparisons. Our results showed that the mean number of anecdotal sightings between 2001 to 2003 followed the same trend as the monthly media index. The largest peak in fox sightings in May corresponded closely to the large peak in media activity in May and June. The higher mean number of fox events in May and June also corresponded to peaks in anecdotal sightings in the same months. Our statistical analysis showed that anecdotal sightings between 2001 and 2003 significantly interacted with the model terms for media and events. Significantly higher numbers of anecdotal sightings were received in the month of May, and this represented an interesting anomaly. And the reason why relates to the highly seasonal nature of fox reproduction and the predictable fluctuations in their population abundance, seen here as the grey line, giving a relative indication of changes in their population density over the year, superimposed upon the previous results. Fox population abundance is lowest prior to the birth of cubs at point A, and peaks with maximal cub births at point B in October each year. The population declines due to mortality beyond point B until the birth of cubs at point A in the following year. Note that the May peak in anecdotal fox sightings corresponds with a period of very low relative fox abundance that is neither associated with high juvenile and subadult fox mortality, nor does it correspond with the period when juvenile and yearling animals are more easily observed and harvested on the mainland, which is normally associated with the period between point C and D. Also note the smaller peak in sightings associated with the month of October that corresponds with a peak in the birth of fox cubs. Normally, however, because this occurs in underground breeding dens, it goes unseen. Cubs are dependent upon breeding dens for some 8 weeks after birth, yet because no fox breeding dens have been located in Tasmania, nor have any sightings of live fox cubs been confirmed, it is difficult to explain this second peak in sightings other than as a trend where sightings follow media intensity and reported fox events, as our previous analysis indicated. In a review of the Fox Eradication Program in 2006, Saunders and others used quarterly totals of anecdotal sightings to assess baiting efficacy at 12 locations in Tasmania. When examining these data on a quarterly basis, media and fox-associated events also closely predicted anecdotal sightings. Importantly, in this comparison, the anecdotal sightings subjectively assessed to be excellent by the Fox Eradication Program most closely corresponded with the trend in the index of media intensity and events. Therefore, it appears that media intensity and fox events also influenced the subjective rating of anecdotal sightings provided by the Fox Eradication Program. The association between media and sightings rated as excellent was highly statistically significant. Accordingly, subjective assessments of sighting reliability appear to be affected by cognitive bias. When the effect of annual media intensity was examined, it also correlated with anecdotal sightings with a high degree of certainty. Annual fluctuations in sightings were strongly predicted by fluctuations in media intensity in the same year. Particularly notable is the rising and falling of sightings corresponding to changes in media intensity in the same year. Overall, the annual media indices produced a strong and significant regression with anecdotal sightings. Surprisingly, fluctuations in the number of fox sightings in each year could be accurately predicted based only upon the number of media pages published about foxes in the same year. More evidence of cognitive bias was evident in the subjective assessment of annual sighting reliability. In 2001, when 70 fox sightings were reported, over 56% were subjectively assessed to be reliable by the Fox Eradication Program. Yet by 2009, despite a sevenfold increase in the number of sightings, only 21% were deemed to be of the same quality. This strong inverse relationship between the total number of annual sightings and their assumed reliability suggests that foxes were more reliably detected by the public when reported less often. Yet there is no credible explanation to account for why this would be the case. More probably, the inverse relationship between sighting numbers and their assumed reliability implies that cognitive bias is likely to have influenced the subjective assessment of anecdotal sightings by the Fox Eradication Program. A retrospective analysis of these data demonstrate 4 clear points. Firstly, anecdotal sightings have no known relationship with the presence of extant foxes in Tasmania. Media intensity and reports of prior fox-related events, irrespective of their quality, strongly predicts anecdotal sightings. Reductions in media intensity and not the impact of baiting caused the observed decline in anecdotal sightings of foxes mistakenly believed to measure 1080 baiting efficacy. The interpretation and use of anecdotal sightings is almost certainly heavily affected with cognitive bias.